Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to this new moon forecast where we're going to look at the main astrological themes for the next 2 weeks, new moon to full moon. Thank you for being here. I really, truly appreciate all of you so very much. It's been an afternoon of glitches and bonehead mistakes recording this video, but I think we're hopefully this is the last take. I don't really like to edit my videos. I think that is, I don't know, disingenuous just a little bit. I understand why, but I'd rather spend the time that I would spend editing, warming myself up and then doing an actual reading. And that's usually in one take. So, and I actually had a really good video and realized that my microphone was not plugged in, and the whole thing there was not a single bit of sound, and I was pretty disappointed. But I also feel like that I'm now able to condense a lot of those ideas into a video that's probably a lot. Well, probably not a lot shorter, but maybe a little bit shorter because I was working some things out as we were going along. That's kind of how the reading works. So we're gonna look at a couple different things here with this new moon forecast. So we're gonna do a little bit of retrospective, kind of go back and review where we've been in the last lunar cycle, because as of this recording right now we are in our balsamic moon, and everything that we have learned, all of the experiences that we have interacted with over the past couple of weeks. I know it's been very heavy and very difficult. That is something that was built into the system as of the last full moon that we just had. I spent an entire video talking about the necessity of being able to utilize those binding and inhibiting circumstances in our lives, even if they're our own minds, to practice and to improve on our ability to make the most of contention, right? Contention, resistance, opposition, right? Knowing that when anything is presented as its opposing force in our projects, in our goals, whatever it is we're attempting to accomplish, what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go, that it's in the process of working with that polarity and duality that we actually create something new, right? And that's the Sagittarius energy. We had a new moon in Sagittarius, we had the full moon in Gemini, and now we're finishing that up, and we're about to have a new moon in Capricorn. And that is Western astrology, the 9 to 10 degrees area of Capricorn in terms of the living sky, which I wanted to use the Stellarium software, but for whatever reason, it was not cooperating with OBS, which is the software I use to record and stream, and both of them running at the same time just wasn't happening. So I do have just kind of a still image of the Sagittarius constellation, because the sun, that is where the sun is at this upcoming new moon. And then we'll just look at the play-by-play, what to expect, the general astrological weather over the next 2 weeks up to the full moon in Cancer. So if I could give a general theme here of the next lunar cycle, what types of intentions might be worth at least investigating, let alone setting intentions, like where can we frame or how can we frame our focus with this new moon in terms of our own personal journey, what we're learning, what to expect in the next couple of weeks. And I would say that the general theme here is that the fear dial, in whatever direction you choose to look, go ahead and pick an area, and there is a fear dial that could be and probably will be turned up over the next couple of weeks. And of course, a big part of this, as far as I can tell, is that the inauguration of the incoming president of the US is during this entire lunar cycle. We're only going to talk about up to the Cancer full moon, but the inauguration day itself is definitely part of this entire lunar cycle, new moon to new moon. So I do feel like that is part of the slowly but surely rising or escalating of intensity, and that was the theme, I feel like, of the last lunar cycle, like the opportunities to interface with those experiences emotionally, intuitively. Maybe they were affecting our subconscious when we talk about like the full moon in Gemini. But also too the idea of that there is something to be gained, a reward, so to speak, a place of happiness and contentment with oneself as we stay in our integrity, but also are willing to expand what we know into new understanding, right? That's the transition from Gemini to its opposition of Sagittarius. And now that Mercury's direct, which happened right at the full moon, this consistent transformation or uh, uh, bringing together these opposing positions and alchemizing them into something brand new, right? It's moving forward now. Our minds, it's not exactly the best position of Mercury, but with the retrograde here, I do feel like that at the very least, Mercury is going over these belief systems or the social purpose and vision that we may have, and being like, okay, yes, this is the conclusion we're coming to here about whatever it is, and feeling fairly optimistic and willing to uh, just being able to hold the big picture mentally with Mercury and Sagittarius. It's not always the case, but I think having the retrograde here has made it a little bit easier for Mercury to function in its weakest position. Mercury doesn't want to synthesize ideas into understandings. It wants to constantly play in the playground of ideas, but that only takes us so far. Once we endeavor to be in relationship, whether it's personal, domestic, professional, business, spiritual, social, the seventh house, once then there is a purpose that we have to operate under, that we develop as part of being in that relationship. Anyway, I'm just, as a Sagittarius, I'm definitely going on a tangent now. So, which is definitely part of it, being a Sagittarius. As many of you Sag people know, like, talk about weaving a narrative. So, it's like a good lawyer, right? That's actually a great transition. So one of the things I want to talk about is, we've come out of this last Sagittarius new moon, and now we're going to kind of meet the nuts and bolts situations that are going to provide the fear factor in some way. And the energy, the Sabian symbol actually of 10 degrees Capricorn is an albatross, which is, like a large water bird feeding from the hand of a sailor. So implying that it's a human, but is in a position that is close to the ocean, which is the home of the albatross, right? And that the sailor is offering food and the bird is taking it, and therefore a trusting relationship has been built upon, or built in the first place, based on compassion and kind of a common set of, just being life, right? Now, one thing I will share with you about this, and this is where fear factors into this, the way that fear could potentially motivate certain actions or decisions. Now, just keep in mind, I just want you to pay attention to Mars. Just the fact that it's retrograde now, right? The complete antithesis to the energy of Mars, right? Which is forward, right? It's out the gate. It is masculine warrior energy, right? It's cardinal fire when it's ruling Aries. Or when it's ruling Scorpio, it's diving very, very deep. So the retrograde of Mars is something that is not in its vocabulary. And so sometimes when Mars is retrograde, you can find an overcompensation for that energy in some ways. So we're going to come back to Mars because it's very important in the upcoming week, especially after this Capricorn new moon. You're going to see the situations, you're going to experience the situations. Maybe you're just witnessing in other people or at a public level the fear dial getting turned up in some way. Now, if you've really dealt with or consciously engaged with the struggles and the binding circumstances in your life over the last 2 weeks and certainly the last month, I think that you've all, those of us have been doing that. And I know that's a lot. I mean, especially to have the Scorpio moon be at Christmas, it was really heavy. You could just see it out in the milieu of social media. People just like, I'm not really feeling it. People becoming hyper aware that many family members are missing now from gatherings and stuff. Like the weight of it was a lot. But that doesn't mean that we give up necessarily on addressing those difficulties in our lives. And I think that now we have the means and the capacity to overcome the fear when it's presented in a very tangible, physical way. I mean, Capricorn is about the actual nuts and bolts themselves, holding the structure together, right? And sometimes you have to take a little bit of a risk and be willing to trust. But also, when you don't trust, there's always the potential to bite the hand that feeds you. And I was taking a walk this morning and I was listening to something, and I was also kind of half thinking about how's this like factoring into what I'm going to talk about with this new moon, because I knew that this is what the Sabian symbol it is, right? The albatross feeding from the hand of a sailor, right? The overcoming fear and its rewards, and what to expect over the next couple of weeks around whatever it is. And I was listening to something and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about this degree in particular, and as soon as I was thinking it, the person I was listening to said that phrase about something, biting the hand that feeds you. And I was like, ooh, that is definitely going to be a big, and that's what you do when you're acting out of fear. That's what an animal would do. An instinctual reaction to bite the hand that feeds you, as a fear reaction or an aggressive reaction, maybe preventative, right? And so that's how this energy could go if we are not aware of the other very tense aspects that are going to be surrounding it and happening over the course of the next, definitely the 2 weeks, but even in just the next week, starting with New Year's Eve on the calendar and moving into the 3rd and to the 4th. It's going to be, and even the first quarter moon, but it's definitely soon. The struggles and the tension will provide the impetus for that fear dial to go up, whatever they are. And like I said, it might be something where it's not even like super obvious. I would say, for instance, Aquarius rising people, right? All this is going to be happening in your 12th house, right? These are very private, under the radar, in the background types of, this is the type of area that has to do more with the either collective unconscious, how it's manifesting in your subconscious, something that has to do with much more of a private, reclusive nature. And so, Aquarius rising people, if this new moon is in your 12th house, for instance, depending on where your cusps are, you may find that this is something that's happening way in the background for you, not necessarily, aspects of your life, kind of blowing up or whatever. Because with Mars and Pluto about to be in an opposition, we're going to get another really strong, like, drive to do something, which, the last time was right before the presidential election, and that was Mars direct in the last degree of Cancer, Pluto in the last degree of Capricorn, and that was just before the election, right? And so that energy really was harnessed to protect. 30 degrees Cancer is very conservative and it's very protective and glorifies the past traditions and heritage that bind those groups together. This is why national identity and pride fits into Cancer in the 4th house, right? And so Mars was direct and Pluto was retrograde. It was in Capricorn, right? There was something that energy was very much harvested and brought into to make some significant change, to overcome what seemed like, what we were being told, or like, very, just like a landslide, right? And so regardless of what you think about it, it's just what happened. So now we have the same energy, this intensity between Mars and Pluto that's happening exact on the third, and it's going to start building on. It's going to start building on the 31st of New Year's Eve. So, and there are some exit routes, right? There's some alternative routes. There's some detours that will help alleviate the tension, as we're going to see. If you are willing to, if you're gonna, if that is really going to help with your situation, it may be a bypass, right? You may find that as this is happening, you also really need to deal with something like in a relationship or in terms of what is really valuable and meaningful to you. And that's going to be Venus and Mars's relationship with each other at the same time. So, and I'll show this to you as we go along. But first I want to just point out where the actual conjunction of the sun and the moon is going to be in terms of the constellations and the fixed stars, just to add that layer, right? And there's no particular starseed connection to the new moon, but there are fixed stars in the Sagittarius constellation. But what is coming in really strong during this and another transit that's on its way is the LYRAN starseed component. So, some of the traits that some of the traits of the LYRAN starseed beings, right? The signature of the LYRAN starseed, you're going to hear some of these traits echoed in what I bring up about these fixed stars in the Sagittarius constellation. They're not in the Lyra constellation, but they're aligned with the Lyra constellation in terms of Western astrology, right? And so they have an impact, right? They're lined up. There is a direct current between one and the other in terms of geometry. So you're gonna hear traits that are part of the LYRAN starseed, and I think it's those traits that are going to be the most valuable moving forward, right? Because the LYRAN starseed, out of all of them, I think is the representative of the energy of like the fearlessness that's necessary to really accomplish something, right? That LYRAN starseeds are very independent. And it's because they know what it takes in order to really achieve something and to reach their goals. And sometimes they do things that other people are just too scared and nervous to do. And so we really need to, if you have LYRAN starseed traits, then this is a great time to, reconnect with them, see where Capricorn is in your chart, for instance, and see what area of life that you can really make the most of this. This is going to come up big time when the sun is in a conjunction with Vega, right? Vega is one of the brightest stars in our sky and is the main star in the LYRAN constellation. So, and it's the sun and Saturn are going to be in a sextile, and Saturn rules Capricorn, right? So there is this energy coming that is very transformative and stabilizing, and really just, if we're already persistent and determined and we have patience with what we're really a part of and contributing ourselves to, and Saturn is really grounding us into a maturity about what we're part of and what we give to whatever it is that we're part of, right? It doesn't matter if we're talking about relationship or a business or a society or a spiritual practice. If I feel like that it's just going to reinforce that. But if things have been chaotic and people are not able to really make the most of the inhibitions or the inhibiting circumstances in their life, then that is going to reinforce a lot of just like frustration and isolation, because that's the other thing about the LYRAN energy. Like, there's so much deep experience and ancient wisdom with the LYRAN energy that they just don't it's not flaky so much as they are very hard to pin down. They're very independent. These are people that like to travel and to do things that are a little bit risky, but they've calculated that risk, and there is a fearlessness. So I'm going to just share with you really quick the let's see here. The fixed star, it's called Facies and Caus Borealis. Let me bring this up for you, right? So we're in the head of the Sagittarius constellation. So Caus Borealis or Facies, Facies. These are stars. Facies is actually a star cluster and a nebula. And so it's not one singular star, but is a collection of stars. But it is right in the head here. So this is where the sun and moon will be relative to our vision at the new moon, is pretty much at the head of the Sagittarius constellation. And so there are, it's this star doesn't have a good track record in terms of ancient astrology, and it creates violence and losses and overreaction, and chronic, difficult to diagnose serious illnesses. That sounds kind of familiar, actually. So that's the other thing, is that, for instance, overcoming the fear and its rewards in the area of the medical institution, for instance, right? I mean, the fear around the chronicness and the very difficult to treat or diagnose problems starts to get turned up more and more as people are, having issues, either, based on a number of things that are coming either out of the medical industrial complex or somewhere else, right? The positive aspects of this star, which is up here, like I said, in the head of Sagittarius constellation, this is where the new moon is happening on the 30th. You have leadership ability, fearlessness, right? This is very positive attributes that, people maybe want to cultivate for themselves, right? And because that's where things really happen, right? That's where goals are met. So driven, focused, fearless, outspoken, groundbreaking, prolific. These are great. Productive and profound, influential, powerful insight, right? So a lot of astrologers think that this star has an unfortunate influence, but it's not the whole story. And it's all about how this energy is used, of course. So this is where the new moon is happening. So you can see too that there's this connection here to all of these really fearless, outspoken, and focused and driven energy. And this is, again, how we overcome the fear and get on the other side to whatever the reward is, right? A more trusting society, intimacy in relationships, something that, there's peace amongst beings, and we can share space, right? Okay, so I had to change the lighting. So this is the constellation, the sidereal astrology. This is where the new moon is going to be happening. So it's pretty clear, based on a number of different factors, depending on which type of astrology or what you're really focusing on, that these types of qualities of being driven and focused and fearless are a big part of this next lunar cycle, something that we would want to add in, to either focus on or to intend to bring into our decision-making process, or to, what are the things that we can do to minimize a fearful reaction to a situation, right? And everybody's got a different mechanism that they use, right? I mean, meditation and breathing definitely helps in these situations, right? Keeping yourself educated, but not necessarily being completely absorbed in the narrative and the propaganda. What are your ways of keeping your field strong, your electromagnetic field strong? Like what do you use? What is your practice? All of those things. This is what we've been working with for especially the past month, and now it's going to be time to apply it. So let's start looking at the play-by-play here and get an idea of like what days are going to be especially dramatic for all of us here on planet Earth. So this is the chart of the new moon. Like I said, 9 to 10 degrees Capricorn. Sabian symbols, you always round up in terms of the degrees. So 10 degrees Capricorn would be the Sabian symbol, right? The albatross feeding from the hand of the sailor. And you can also see that Pluto, now in Aquarius, is in a favorable aspect to the nodes of the moon. So definitely some really powerful soul oriented energy connecting here, because the nodes of the moon are the trajectory of the soul in that time, that moment, and Pluto is power at a soul level, right? Power at the most fundamental level. And to have them in a relationship like this, being aspecting each other in a favorable way, does suggest that there's something to be said for our ability to look at things objectively. And even if we don't even if we don't necessarily have any control of what's happening, which I do feel like there's a lot of that that's going around, that's just going to increase. In fact, I feel like the Mars Pluto opposition, the second of the three because of the retrograde of Mars, this is about to happen. And let's see here. Let's start showing the play by play, because it's going to start building on New Year's Eve. You're going to see it. I'll show it to you in the chart itself. You're going to see the opposition with Pluto and Mars is going to start building on New Year's Eve, and it's just going to get stronger. The mystic rectangle that has the nodes of the moon involved, this has a lot to do with, it's either a bypass if you are avoiding something, or you're not utilizing this energy of the Mars Pluto opposition in a controlled and channeled way. Then the creative potential that we're all being pulled towards, right? The new creative potential, the unadulterated, pure creative potential that is just, an impression coming out of nothingness, right? The woman rising from the sea. It's so precarious. Like, there's no guarantees. It's just this new energy coming forward, which is where we're all being pulled in this direction, is to really tap in at a soul level to that moment of potentiality that this represents. If we're able to we can hold on here. We can make the most of this mystic rectangle that we see here with the nodes of the moon and the Mars-Pluto opposition, especially with a retrograde Mars. It's really going to want to spread something or do something or push something, panic maybe, you know what I mean? Or an overcompensation, trying to do something in a way, trying to do something as a means to try to control for a situation which can't be controlled, or people overcompensating for expressing themselves because they feel actually that they're misunderstood or they're being rejected in some way. And I definitely feel like it is a misunderstanding if this is like a personal, because I don't think it's going to be personal for everybody. I think that there's going to be anywhere from New Year's Eve all the way up to about the 4th or the 5th, there's going to be, of January, that whole week is going to be set up for a lot of inner tension, some outer tension in terms of what we want and what we need. Definitely this Mars-Pluto opposition is going to have people acting and on their deepest desires, almost to the point where it might be dominating or very manipulative. But yet there is a way to release some of the tension with this mystic rectangle around these issues, if we see that as a way to not just bypass some difficult conversations or having to face the truth about certain things. I feel like that tension is going to really come up very strong in the week after New Year's Eve, and is either going to be a necessary, like, okay, it's time to, you're either going to be motivated again by this imbalance that you're feeling and how to respond to it, like really mustering your courage to have a conversation or to address an issue that really needs to be addressed, or knowing, or not, not having the courage, and the old toxic patterns of passive aggressiveness, or just like becoming someone's, doormat in some ways. Those things will continue, and it will just, you're going to have to work that much harder to overcome the fear that will likely present itself very strongly around the 13th to the 15th, right? Because the full moon in Cancer is the 13th of January, and it's going to be like 24 degrees Cancer. So, and that's very intense, right? The moon is the ruling body of Cancer. So to have a full moon in Cancer like this, with everything else going on, is going to be very deep and very powerful and intense, right? And the capacity to, again, hold it together within ourselves is going to come out big time around that time. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. You might become like really aware of like, wow, look how emotionally contained and held I am just because of the work that I've done to get here. Other people might not be so comfortable with making that, having to just face the reality of a situation. So, but the first week after New Year's, the first week of this lunar cycle, even, I think it's going to be quite a doozy. Okay, so let's start looking at the dates so that we know how to prepare ourselves. Right now, I told you the 31st is when things start to really pop off, and then that energy really stays all the way. It's really that energy, that mystic rectangle, that is very much present all the way up to the 3rd. And this is where, like I said, Venus and Mars come into that quincunx, that inconjunct. And there's going to also be another inconjunct, which is Sun and Jupiter, and we'll get there, because this is when things start to they can really turn around. But at this point, we're still kind of being, challenged in some ways. Oh, the Sun quincunx Jupiter, that already happened on the 2nd. So the 2nd and 3rd, there are these two major quincunxes or inconjuncts that are really going to, the inner tension and the lack of balance will be very palpable in different areas of life. So Sun quincunx Jupiter, right? Sun in Capricorn and Jupiter in Gemini, right? If you're on the right path for your soul, then all this is really going to do, I think, is going to, increase that yearning. The lack of balance is really just going to be seen as something else to work towards balancing out and reaching goals. So if you're on the right path, striving and a little bit of luck with this type of transit is what to maybe, I don't want to say expect, especially because, again, Jupiter is retrograde. So we find ourselves being a little conservative about certain things. But any imbalance between what you want and what you need to make you happy will become very evident around this time. So, again, the 2nd and 3rd, these things, this lack of balance is going to present itself in so many different ways. And there's so many opportunities for dissatisfaction, for disappointment, for insecurity. And now this time of year, it's always difficult for people to really pull themselves out of their funk, right? January and February are just really difficult months, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. So this transit is going to amplify those feelings of insecurity and uncertainty, but consider that it might be necessary for you to reassess your goals, right? If you continued on the wrong path and it just seems like that you can't succeed and it keeps eluding you, maybe it's time to reassess your goals, right? And maybe consolidating or picking a single goal to make things a little bit easier instead of trying to focus on like the whole thing all at once. And so this can increase your anxiety, certainly, and especially if you have not been very productive or over-optimistic, right? I mean, it might challenge that. So, but it can be a turning point. This is what I really like about this energy, is that it can be a turning point for like unhealthy and destructive behaviors. I think that this moment is where people can turn it around and you can have a much more philosophical and spiritual approach. to your life. I think this is going to be really necessary because, of course, like I said, you come into the third, and then you have this Pluto Mars opposition exact, and then you have the quincunx, the in conjunct with Venus and Mars, right? And these two are meant to be complementary. So when they're out of balance, it can either lead you to like really interesting and dramatic life experiences in a way that's like adventurous and experimental. I mean, I think toning back a little bit just because of the retrograde of Mars. And so, but there's a lot of inner tension that could easily be brought out with this type of transit. And unless you have a place to put this energy that you need to be enthusiastic about, or, put a lot of energy into doing something, expressing yourself, like being part of something, but there are big losses too. I think, again, extra strength and courage, right? Even if you're feeling misunderstood, even if you're feeling rejected, even if you're feeling like an outcast, and I do feel like that there could be some of this disillusionment again, and feeling frustrated with your social life, especially because you may, feel Venus in Pisces. You may actually feel like the full extent of everything all together at once, and but there's this fire burning in your belly that wants to come out with Mars, but it's retrograde. I just feel like that this type of transit could easily be passive aggressive energy, because if unless you can really like pull on that inner courage truly to confront problems, and so they don't spiral out of control. The thing that makes it harder is because Mars is opposite Pluto. Like, this is so intensely, like, there's a lot of power that can be harnessed here, but there's also a lot of possibility that that power is used very inappropriately and being very dominating. And so if you're also feeling misunderstood, rejected, disillusioned, and or you have low self-esteem going on at the time, again, I feel like that this could easily spiral out of control. And again, the fear factor is getting turned up around this time, I think, based on all of these transits. And so being able to love yourself and have a healthy self-image is going to be really important here, because you may not be able to express the fullness of yourself with Mars in its retrograde in this moment, right? You may have to just, I don't want to say stifle, but you might have to keep some things to yourself. But other things may not be able to be kept to ourselves, if that makes sense, right? Some things need to be addressed, and this Pluto Mars opposition might be exactly the type of tension that is needed in order to catapult someone into a difficult interaction or conversation that just needs to happen, right? Things really start to lift, though, about the 4th, which is great because this is where the sun comes into alignment with Vega, right? The LYRAN activation is huge, and then it's in a sextile or a 60-degree angle with Saturn, which I really love, because this type of transit is, you just can really draw on patience and determination and a really strong work ethic, especially because the sun is in Capricorn at Vega. So it helps you overcome setbacks, solve problems. So it's like, if you can get through the New Year's Eve up to this point, there does seem like that there is something that can be really drawn on to help overcome setbacks, solve problems, and complete long-term goals, right? And maybe something didn't work out the way that you wanted to, but this is a perfect opportunity to set new, realistic, and achievable goals, right? And maybe you've been put to the test, and there is a heaviness around kind of, going through a situation, right? That you have to, it's like a simulated assault, right? You're on the battlefield with live shells, but it's not the real thing, but you're still kind of getting your ass kicked, maybe, with Saturn there. Like, there's no way around it, but I do feel like that it's the sun in Capricorn here with Vega, right? The patience, the self-discipline, the fearlessness, the prolific nature, right? Groundbreaking, and also very determined. Is and determined in a way to really take care of those that you're responsible for, right? And have a mutual sense of respect and maturity and common sense with those that you're in community with, right? It helps resolve conflicts, bring harmony, stability, and commitment to relationships, right? So this is a great thing to have happen after kind of all of this really intense energy with Mars and Pluto and Venus during this Capricorn season. It's going to be a crazy week, though. That's what it feels like. Significant achievements, recognition, or promotion may materialize from previous hard work, right? So, again, if you've been just doing the work and really staying aware and focused on, staying in your lane and doing what you feel is best in order to really manage your maximum potential in this life, I feel like that this, by the time we get to here, it's just like, oh yeah, you have that really strong foundation in which to work from. And you might find yourself, instructing other people. You may show your leadership qualities. LYRAN star seeds, I think that, especially LYRAN star seeds, this could definitely be the case for some people that have strong Lyra in their charts, right? And identify with this. You may find like it's really paying off these qualities. So our first quarter moon is on the 6th. Mercury is going to square Neptune at the same time, so just know that there's all kinds of confusing and distorted thinking with Mercury in a square to Neptune, and just keep in mind that Mercury is going to be in a conjunction with the galactic center, and if you remember the square with the Sun and Neptune before Christmas, that was probably the most ruthless of all the squares, in my opinion. It was probably right around to where when the sightings in New Jersey started to really get a lot of attention. And also people were getting sick, right? And Sun square Neptune definitely lowers your defenses. People are more susceptible to infection and things like that. And people were having health impact and reactions to being in proximity to these sightings, and not even in proximity. I know people that were getting, including myself, right? Things came up that I was like, something is happening. Now, the 6th, Mercury, and so Mercury was the Sun was in a square of Neptune. So now Mercury is going to be in a square to Neptune at these same locations, as you can see here. Mercury is about to come out of Sag, but before it does, it's going to be in a square to Neptune. So just know that you got to be on the up and up with anything that you're communicating. Okay. Even giving or receiving instructions can suffer from a lack of clarity and misrepresentation, especially if it's something that you have been used to doing or using or operating within this whole time. I think that this is gonna blur the signal, this Mercury square Neptune, and this is while we're having a first quarter moon. So just know that there's an extra challenge here to the crisis of what do I do when Mercury and Neptune are in this square. So you have to be on the up and up, right? You can't be little white lies. Don't even fly around this time. And I have a feeling is just, what you've believed or how you've interacted in relationship or in social settings. I do feel like that this type of transit might come back to bite some people in the ass. If you don't if you're not completely transparent and open about what you're saying, what you're communicating, and being so much more susceptible to extreme spiritual, religious views, right? Psychic vampires are huge when Mercury is a square to Neptune, right? And any type of drugs and alcohol that's going to change your perception is... After what happened with the Sun square Neptune and my personal experiences and what I was watching around me, and the fact that it was, the galactic center energies are also filtered, everything, the veil got very thin. And I have a feeling with Mercury, it's going to be that much more distorted in our minds. So please be aware of that as we come into the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. Okay, so the good news is, leading up to the full moon, Mars will be back in Cancer and it will trine Neptune, which is, gives a lot of spiritual courage, right? To be kind of a champion of humanity in some ways. Now, let me bring up the chart and then we can talk about it. Sunday the 12th. Ooh, look at that. That's actually quite a nice grand water trine with Venus, the moon, and Lilith. Very feminine, with all of, the moon and Lilith, which is black moon Lilith, and then Venus. There's a lot in water, in a grand water trine. Whew, that's going to be very powerful. Talk about like seeing into the magic mirror. Ooh, boy. Sun will trine Uranus at the time of the full moon, but the thing that I want to point out here before, oh, sorry, before we move on, I'm just showing you half a chart here, if you're even looking. So the one thing I do want to look at is Mars trine Neptune, adding to this water energy with Mars in Cancer and Neptune in Pisces. So, it's very stimulating. Um, Community spirit, but also our own sense of who we are and where we belong. And it's not very aggressive. They can just be very, encounters can be just very intense and compassionate, right? It's not a high energy transit. There's a lot of energy behind the motivation to express yourself and your creativity and to get into activities or art forms, dancing and music and sculpture, things that are very like physical or very, with music and dancing, right? You also have sound that's part of the expression, right? And maybe there's a strong urge to engage in more spiritual activities with especially Mars trine Neptune in Pisces, right? It's not aggressive, but there is a strong spiritual courage here. And you can kind of fight and stand up for the underdog with Mars trine Neptune. But I do feel like a return back to something that is deeper than all of the conditions and groups that humanity kind of, we put ourselves in, like kind of a return, an inner rebirth, or returning back to the nature of the human family, for instance. I do feel like that could go very well for this Mars trine Neptune. And then we have the full moon in Cancer. But the other thing about the Mars trine Neptune, I will say, as we kind of close this out and wrap this up, is that it also can be, the trine really helps, but I feel like it also can kind of just keep in mind that Mars is going to go direct and come back and meet Neptune one more time. And, maybe this is just an opportunity to consider what it feels like to travel a little deeper into your root system. Like where is your sense of home and family? Where actually is it? And I think that's some of the best use of Mars retrograde, especially in Cancer, is to put that energy into going deeper into the soil, going deeper into our root system, like really using that momentum to establish a more foundational connection, right? The root system, to go deeper, to spread wider, right? Maybe to reinforce what's already there. That also seems like a strong message right now, because that also is going to matter as we come into the full moon, and we have to learn how to be kind of interdependent with what is already established. And that's going to really allow us to make a commitment to, it's like a woman entering a convent. Actually, that is going to be the degree of the sun, 24 degrees Capricorn, at the next full moon, right? But you have to actually be able to emotionally connect with and reinforce the internally, in order for you to commit externally through the system, right? That's kind of the thing, is like society provides these spaces for people to come and commit themselves spiritually, but it's the society, it's the cohesion of the group that actually makes that determination, and then you kind of give yourself over to that. And I think that the Mars trine Neptune leading up to, and then leading up to this full moon is really going to either strengthen that cohesion and that root system and strengthen our sense of being provided for and to have access to everything we need, because that's what Neptune. I know it's weird. It's kind of hard to see because Neptune is direct now, so the fog machine is turned back on. So it's kind of hard to know, like, is there a fertile garden here? It's only when the fog really cleared that we were able to be like, wow, this is everything tailored to me and my karma exactly. So this grand water trine with Venus and Lilith and the moon, I think, is really important. I mean, if ever there was a time to really pay attention to and utilize and this is everybody, not just women, but the feminine aspect of intuition and feeling and our emotional landscape and our subconscious, and even like where we feel powerless, because that's a lot of what Lilith represents, and being outcast in some ways, and how from that place we will betray our own integrity and lash out. That's a whole lot of what the last lunar cycle was really teaching us, and how to manage that. So this is going to be putting it into practice 100%. That's, well, maybe I'd say like 97%, right? I'm not trying to, nothing is definitive, right? But I do see in various areas of life that we're going to put a lot of that in that learning curve from last month into practice, and seeing how we're going to respond to the fear as it's turned up, and what is to be gained from overcoming that, right? Just like in the Dune series, fear is the mind killer. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. My friends, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you so very much. This forecast is for everyone. Of course, if you are a Capricorn, Sun, Moon, or Rising, just know that everything I just talked about is going to affect you at a personal, subjective level, either how you feel, how you express yourself, or who you are as a person. So just know that you are holding the space for all of us in terms of what this is all going to represent. So if you are interested in a reading, energy work, or just to any of my services, they're on my website, linked in the description box below, as well as the social media platforms that Catalyst Energies is on currently, and the other channels that are not this one, that you can find these videos. So I hope everyone is enjoying their holiday season as much as they can. Certainly finding a space within yourself to have some gratitude for the blessings that are in your life, and the the humility, and hopefully finding the grace to grow out of the places that really need to be healed. So the healing, and then the new growth that is capable of coming out of those spaces. That's a big part, I think, of Chiron coming direct, which is right at the tail end of the balsamic moon phase. So here's to another lunar cycle and overcoming the fear that holds us all back from aligning with our true selves, which is spirit. So love you guys. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everything that you do, subscribing, liking, commenting, if you have anything that you want to add. And I will see you on the next video, which will be the full moon in Cancer in the middle of January. Ta-ta.